Well, good evening. Happy Tuesday, and I am back for the third time. So this is gonna be something different. So I decided, hey, I got a bunch of extra time on my hand today. Why don't I do something a little bit different? So I'm gonna do a live NFL talk. So you're wondering how this is gonna work? Is I'm gonna give an overview of the different teams. I'm gonna kind of, give a brief overview of the different teams, starting from worst to the last two teams eliminated, those being the San Francisco 49ers and the Cincinnati Bengals. Something they're going to need to focus on the offseason. I'm going to talk about the main thing I feel like those teams got to focus on. Guys coming in can feel free to comment in the chat. Let me know if you agree, disagree. If there's any additional point you want to add to it, you can type it in the comments. We're going to have some fun with this thing right here. So that's what I'm going to do right there. So since we still have the Super Bowl to be played between my team, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Kansas City Chiefs, what I'm going to do with that is once I go through those teams, I'm going to give it keys to victory for the Eagles and the Chiefs. So that's how it's going to go down right here. So we're going to start off this thing discussing the Chicago Bears. So the Chicago Bears, they finished with a league worst record in the NFL. They got the number one pick, and they got a little bit of help from Mr. Lovie Smith, their former head coach. We decided to give the Houston Texans the screw you when they decided to help play for the win. So the Bears, obviously, they were terrible record-wise. They only had 3 wins. But one thing did come out of it. There was some glimmer of hope at the QB position from Justin Fields. Justin Fields made some nice plays, but it felt like mostly he was playing more as a running back than as a quarterback. So one thing the Bears need is they need receivers. They need reliable weapons for Justin Fields to throw the ball to. And Chase Claypool ain't going to be a real reliable number one option. So therefore, they got to get some more options right there for him to throw the ball to. And they also need some help at their O-line too. So mainly wide receiver, O-line. On the offensive side of the ball, the Bears need help with. They got to give Justin Fields some protection, some time to get his feet set, and to throw the ball, because that O-line last year, he was practically getting a hatchet job done to him. Just destroyed out there. I mean, he barely had any time to get his feet set, and that's why a lot of times Fields was running, because he has no offensive line to block for him. So he definitely needs that. And obviously a few better wide receivers too. They do need a little bit of help on defense, mainly edge, but they got to focus on fixing that offensive line so Justin Fields can actually have some time to get his feet set and make some throws in the passing game. And a little bit of upgrade help at wide receiver, especially an upgrade would be helpful to Justin Fields. So that is what the Chicago Bears need. And speaking of that, they secured the number one pick because of a win by the Houston Texans, who got a win over the Indianapolis Colts. Now, the Texans, obviously, well, one thing they need is a head coach that could actually going to give longer than a season to get behind. That's one thing they need. But also, they need a quarterback. Okay, and once the whole Bill O'Brien saga went down, and then on top of the Deshaun Watson saga, but let's face it, what was going on with Deshaun Watson behind the scenes? That was going to mess them over regardless at QB position. They were going to be messed over because of all the bad, even if they didn't. I mean, that Deshaun Watson situation would have blew up in their face if he was still on the roster. But clearly, no, now in the position they're in, they need a quarterback. Clearly. I mean, Bryce Young is probably, I don't see the Bears drafting a QB at all. So they're probably going to give Bryce Young could still be on the board for them. So they can get Bryce Young right there. They need a quarterback. Also, they obviously need some receivers and better options. I mean, Brandon Cooks, he's all right. He's solid, but clearly he didn't want to be there. He showed signs of it. But yeah, the main thing they need, well, they really need help everywhere, but the main thing I emphasize with the Houston Texans, they need a quarterback. They need a face of the franchise quarterback because clearly they don't have that right now. So that's the first step in in this long rebuild. So that's as simple as that right there. They need a bunch of other help too, and they do get some other help with some additional picks too. They got from the Browns, so that could help them out their other positions in need. But yeah, it's gonna be a lot of work right there. So, but that's the one I'm going to emphasize the most is QB. And now for the Arizona Cardinals. This is an interesting one because the Cardinal, I mean, they have some talent there. They have Kyler Murray's a solid QB. But really, they need one thing they need is better structure, too. Clearly, they need better structure at coaching him because Cliff Kingsbury clearly wasn't the answer. And I had a feeling going back to 2019, like, this is not the guy you're going to want as your head coach, Cardinals. This guy had a losing record at Texas Tech. That should have been a red flag right there. I mean, yeah, a potent offense, but a losing record. That should have been a red flag. Hey, it's not the guy you want head coaching in the NFL. And they had that season where that air raid offense, they 2021 put them in good position to start the season off strong and to at least clinch a playoff spot. You saw late it collapsed on them. But that's one thing they mainly need is better structure, though. Better coaching and better discipline in their locker room. So that's the main thing I feel like the Arizona Cardinals need right there because they haven't had good coaching in. Oh boy, when was the last time the Arizona Cardinals really had good? Well, since Bruce Arians. Almost slipped my mind. Yeah, but they haven't had a good coach since Bruce Arians. In the time before that, can you really say the late 2000s was good coaching or talent? So if you beside Bruce Arians, when did the Cardinals really had a good coach? So they need to do a better job here finding the right head coach for this situation. So that's the main thing the Cardinals are going to need to get better there because you clearly saw last year Cliff Kingsbury was not cut out to be an NFL head coach. I mean, we already kind of saw that he wasn't a good coach, but last year proved it without a shadow of a doubt. And now they're moving on. Now, this next one, move on to the next one. Now, this is a team that needs quite a bit. But I feel like the one thing they may need to do is take a quarterback. And they should be in good position to get one, too, because should be the second team in the draft to get a quarterback, in my view. So, because the Bears, they're probably going to go O-line or receiver. And then you got the Cardinals. They might go line, defense. Or maybe try to get a younger receiver in there, but you got CJ Stroud might be in there. He might land to the Colts right there. So there's a good possibility he could be the second QB taken after Bryce Young. So you're talking about possibly two teams in the AFC South drafting quarterbacks right there. But yeah, that's the main thing the Colts need because ever since Andrew Luck left, they've just been doing a bunch of one-year rentals at the QB, and it hasn't worked out for him, has it? Phillip Rivers was kind of up and down, roller coaster year. He had a decent final year there. But that was also because the Colts still had a pretty solid roster at the time. But then Carson Wentz, you clearly saw that fell apart when they actually needed him to step up. And last year, Matt Ryan was clearly cooked. And plus, you had the injury to Jonathan Taylor, took a spark out of their offense. And you have Frank Reich getting fired and then Jeff Saturday. And I know Jeff Saturday's got a great rapport with the organization, but he's not the guy that's qualified to be a head coach. Come on, he has no coaching experience. But yeah, clearly it's all falling apart. But the main thing, though, out of it is they need a quarterback. They need to find that guy that's going to be there long term. They need that next face of the franchise quarterback, like a Peyton Manning or what Andrew Luck could have been, and they need it. So QB is definitely the main position. This next one, this is going to be an interesting one. The Rams. What they really need is some extra draft picks, but they gave up some of those picks when they went all in their quest for a Super Bowl. But you gotta wonder now with the Rams, is it true that Matthew Stafford's going to be out? Is it true that, he's no longer going to be there? Are they going to need to start over at the quarterback position? I mean, the Rams, I think they're really going to be starting all over again. I mean, they really need some draft picks. They need some draft capital for sure in order to get back to at least being competitive. Because all those picks they gave up to going all in for a Super Bowl, I mean, it helped them win a Super Bowl, but that already happened. Now it's life after the Super Bowl for the Rams. You could be talking about the worst Super Bowl win hangover in NFL history coming. Because, like I said, they really need those picks back to invest on some players, but we know realistically it's not going to happen. So I just see the Rams being in a long-term decline because they have a need that I'm not sure they're going to be able to fulfill and get. So, the Rams pretty much are in a position now with what happened where they screwed themselves over. So, good luck with that one, Rams. Good luck trying to find what you need. I mean, obviously, they're going to need a healthy O-line, too. I mean, there's a lot of things that this team needs. I can't really think of one main need. I mean, long-term stability at quarterback, healthy O-line. They need some help on the defense long-term. I mean, sure, Jalen Ramsey, he could still be there. He's still young enough to be there, but is he really going to want to stay there? How long do you think how much longer does Jalen Ramsey have left on his contract now that I think about it? So, okay, I'm looking into it. So Jalen Ramsey, I'm not sure how much longer he has left on that contract. Let's see. But I don't know how much longer he's going to be there. I mean, he's still got some time left on that, so he'll probably stay, but they really need a lot of help, though, in rebuilding that line and long-term stability at quarterback. Those are the main things I can think of. But now we're going to move on to another team who gave up a lot to try to win now, but in their case, backfired. So I'm talking the Denver Broncos. We know what the Broncos need, but they don't have the tools to get there yet. Because they tried last season. The one thing they really need is a quarterback, a face of the franchise quarterback, someone that can be that franchise quarterback to help them get back in contention. But here's the thing we know. Last year they tried making that push for Russell Wilson. And obviously it's blown up in their face already. Because clearly Russell Wilson's washed up. He's not the same QB he was. You all thought that maybe Russell Wilson, new scenery with some of those weapons there, it would help him out, but it didn't work out that way because Russell Wilson's washed up, and you clearly saw. I mean, yes, Nathaniel Hackett, bad play calling, played a role too. So they also need better coaching, but it's mainly the quarterback one's the main thing they need to possibly get back in contention. And yeah, but they have the chance, but they're screwed. They have to get it, but they're screwed. Because the thing is with Russell Wilson, I mean, last year he didn't do anything that really inspired me to believe that he still got it. In coaching, well, obviously they need a coach too. But yeah, the Broncos, good luck trying to find those main things you need right there. I mean, I think they have a better shot at the coach one, though. But we'll see if they pull it off. Now this next team is another team, is a division rival of theirs. The Las Vegas Raiders. So obviously we know, well, really they need a better coach is really what they need. Because clearly you saw what happened last season, 2021, that is, with Rich Bisaccia versus Josh McDaniels. You could clearly see a clear downgrade with that offense. And now, because of that downgrade with that offense, Derek Carr is gone. He's not coming back. It'll be interesting to see where he lands, but because of that, what do the Raiders need? Obviously, a quarterback. They're going to need to make a push now for a quarterback. I mean, considering they're stuck with Josh McDaniels' contract, they're going to really need a quarterback that can help them overcome it. At this point, I think really what you need to do, I think the best shot this has this could even work is they have to go all in and make a push for a QB. Maybe try to make a push for Aaron Rodgers, get him reunited with Devontae Adams. Because here's the thing. Do you really trust the Raiders to bring in a young QB and put him with Josh McDaniels? Do you really think that's going to be good? Think it's going to work good for him? I don't think that'll work good for a young QB to be put in that situation with McDaniels as his coach. I think that could be a confidence shatterer. So I think the best shot you have is to go in and get a trade for a guy like a Rodgers, or that's all I can think of, mostly trying to pull a trade for at this point that might have a chance at working. But they do need a quarterback, though. That's the main thing they need. I think that's the best way it has a chance of working right now for the Raiders. So now we're going to be moving on right here. So another team who has a similar need. And that team is the Atlanta Falcons. So the Atlanta Falcons, now they're a team, obviously, that needs a lot of help. One thing they clearly need is a quarterback. You saw Marcus Mariota, not the answer. And they still have, what was it, Desmond Ridder, but we didn't really get enough much of a look at him to really know, could this guy do anything or not? So what the Falcons do, they do need a quarterback, though. So that's one thing they clearly need. And with this being a quarterback-heavy draft class, or a stronger QB draft class, maybe there's a chance they go for a quarterback, or maybe they do decide they try to give Desmond Ridder one more look. Maybe that is the case. Maybe they try to bring in some help there, but really, though, they do need a quarterback. Now, I don't know if Desmond Ridder is necessarily that guy. I don't think he is, but they do need that for sure. So that's one thing the Atlanta Falcons need. And we're starting to notice a trend right here that, especially with some of these NFC teams, you're going to notice they need help there. So now, moving on, speaking of NFC teams, let's get on to the New Orleans Saints. So there's another team right there. Obviously, we know they need a quarterback. You look at 2022, what was the biggest thing that hurt them that season? Clearly, it was a lack of valuable quarterback. They didn't have that there at all. Jameis Winston, he didn't really look all that hot right there for the time he played, and he got injured. So you clearly know Jameis Winston isn't the answer, but I think we pretty much saw that. But now the Saints finally learned that lesson. Then you get Andy Dalton. I don't know what would make anyone think Andy Dalton was their answer, but clearly it wasn't the case. And that's clearly what they need right there for this New Orleans Saints team. They need help other areas too, but the main thing they need to do is they need to be eyeing in on drafting a QB to be their guy going forward. So that's something that the New Orleans Saints, that's the one thing I'm going to emphasize that team needs the most. Because clearly they haven't had that for the past couple of years. And that's the main thing they need. They also need to stay healthy too. But that's the main one right there. And also they're going to need a new training staff to try to help these players stay in better shape. But yep. And now moving along. This next team is going to be an interesting team. Where do we go with this one? The Cleveland Browns. You know what? This isn't the conventional answer, but you know what they really need? They need a new owner. They do. That's the main thing they really need. Because as long as Jimmy Haslam's the owner of that team, the same problems, the same dumb decisions they make over and over again, it's going to continue to come back to haunt them. The constant management changes are still going to be going on that you're used to seeing from this Cleveland Browns team. The constant decisions of either bad drafts or giving up too much, drastically reaching for a rusty Deshaun Watson, which also is going to bring bad PR too, with all his off the field issues. It's just a recipe for disaster with this Cleveland, with that right there. As long as Jimmy Haslam's the owner, I just feel like it's going to be more of the same problems over and over and over again. I mean, they've gotten a little more competitive in recent years, but I feel like that's the best they're going to be under this current regime. So really, they need a new direction at the top. But realistically, I don't see it happening. I just see they're going to be a reoccurring punchline at this point. That's the thing I feel like they really need the most. And now, moving on to the next one. The Carolina Panthers. They need help on the offensive side of the ball. All that time Matt Rule spent investing into the defense, it's clearly hurt them in the long haul because we're in the offense era of the NFL where offense is most important. A lot of these teams still go try to do it by the old way of building up on the defense, but that clearly does not work, and it didn't work for the Carolina Panthers. And so obviously, one thing is they need to fix the quarterback position, and they need to have someone they're actually going to rely on. They need someone to say, here, you're going to be our QB. We're going to get behind you. They don't need to do quarterback carousels. They don't need to alternate where you're not sure who they're going to go with, where they're going between QB1, QB2, QB3. No. They need to pick a QB, stick with it. I mean, past couple seasons, that's the main thing that's hurt them the most is complete instability at QB. 2021, Sam Darnold, Cam Newton, PJ Walker. What are they doing? 2022, make the trade for Baker Mayfield. Make him the starter. He doesn't even last. Back to Sam Darnold. Then try with PJ Walker. Back to Sam Darnold. What are they doing at quarterback? Hey, they need to find a guy that they're going to count on to be their starter, and they need to try to rally behind that person. Doesn't mean it's going to work right off the bat, but hey, they got to do it. They just need that. That's what the main thing they need right there. And they also need a running back, of course. No more Christian McCaffrey. And of course, they need some weapons too. especially at tight ends. But yeah, they got to get better offensively. That was the main thing I'm getting at right here. The Carolina Panthers need that this offseason in order to get better. So now we're moving on to the next team, the Tennessee Titans. Well, let's see. What they could do is, main thing they need to do is try to get behind Malik Willis. And what you saw there with Mike Vrabel at the end of the season, what were they thinking those past couple games? Excuse me, but what were they thinking there trying to go with Joshua Dobbs those last couple games of the season? I know that Malik Willis is green. He still has a ways to go. But was winning that division really worth throwing your young QB to the back burner and running the risk of shattering his confidence? Especially if they're coming across like the the Titans didn't believe in him. Was that really worth it? To try to win that division? For what? What were they going to do if they won that division? What are they going to do? Win that division? Try to throw Joshua Dobbs out there against the Chargers? And then all of a sudden to turn around and come back to Malik Willis? Knowing there's a chance his confidence may have been shattered? That was really worth it? You really thought Joshua Dobbs was going to help you win those games? Which he didn't, mind you. And as a result, they didn't make the playoffs. They ended up losing those 2 games, missing the playoffs. So was that worth it? Was it? And they need some stability at coaching to say, at the coaching helm to say, hey, we're going to try to rally behind Malik Willis. Let him play. Even if it's not the most favorable situation, let him play. Let him get it out of his system. Let him get those experience in clutch games. And even if he didn't, if they would have played Malik Willis those last 2 games against the Cowboys and the Jaguars, okay, they still could have lost those games. Probably still would have lost those games, but at least you would have given Malik Willis the playing time and then give him the opportunity during the offseason to evaluate what he did in those 2 games and see. He could have watched the film of those 2 games, see what he did wrong, and try to work on his game, learn from his mistakes he made, and try to improve coming back next year. But instead, here they are in a situation you don't even know who's going to be the starter next year. And now they find themselves in a tough situation. But Malik Willis, they draft him, so I think he's the guy they got to try to go with for the future. But they need a coach that's going to rally behind him, let him play, and actually be patient with him and actually let him try to progress and get better. So that's what they really need right there. It's clear, like I illustrated, they did not do that with Mike Vrabel. And as long as Vrabel's back, I don't know if they're going to actually fulfill that main need. So now I'm going to move on to the next team on this list. Another team that did a phenomenal job getting behind its young quarterback. Of course, I'm being sarcastic. And that team, you probably have an idea who it is the New York Jets. Because clearly the Zach Wilson things really worked out. That's the main thing that really killed the Jets. They really botched it this season. And I know you question whether or not Zach Wilson is the guy going forward, but come on, you got to rally. If you say you're going to rally behind Zach Wilson, then play the guy. You pulled him twice and benched him twice throughout the season. 2 different times you decide you're going to pull the guy and bench him. And now you're telling me that I'm supposed to believe that this team's really behind their quarterback? What they need is a quarterback they're going to get behind going forward. What are they actually going to try to stick with Zach Wilson, actually support the guy, or try to make a trade for an Aaron Rodgers maybe? Whatever the case is, they need a quarterback that they're going to rally behind and say, this is the guy we want to be our future. Now, this year they did have a better team than most years, so if they can just get it together there's a chance they could be a better team, but that's what they need to do is find a QB they can rally behind. So that's the main thing the Jets need. So this next team, I'm just going to be real brief with it. So that is the Green Bay Packers. What they need to do, I'm going to be direct to the point, so this is going to be the shortest one. Make up their mind what they're going to do with Aaron Rodgers. They need to know, is he staying or do they turn the keys over to Jordan Love? They need to make that decision this offseason and make that decision quickly, because from there, that can affect their approach toward free agency in the draft. If they make that decision to move on with Jordan Love, now they can build free agency in the draft around building up this team to be Jordan Love's team going forward. So that actually would help them out during that period in terms of putting the right pieces together for the Jordan Love era. If Rodgers is coming back, then they need to know that, and they need to decide, okay, we're going to build this around Rodgers. But they need to decide what they're doing with Aaron Rodgers, know who their QB is going to be for next year, and approach the offseason to build around that QB. So that's going to be the quickest one right there. Moving on to a former empire that's fallen off. You kind of got an idea. I'm talking about the New England Patriots. What I really think they need the most, they need a better draft. Yeah, because the past couple drafts have not been that great for them. So in off seasons, the past couple drafts and off seasons have been a few head shaking ones. So the Patriots need to do a better job this off season in building up for the future. Plain and simple. If they can do that, then, okay, there's a good chance. Then there's a chance they could maybe revitalize themselves going forward. But they need to do a better job with their draft and putting some of the pieces together going forward. So that's one thing they need to do right there. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take a small little break. Then I'm going to come back to do the second half of this. Give me a minute. So I'll be back in a few moments. So now I'm back. So I finished discussing the first round. So the first round I did the first half of going through some of the teams and what they need. So now I'm going to be back to the second round of it. So I'm going to continue just giving that brief overview of what the teams need going forward. So here we go. Let's get back to it. So the Washington Commanders, main thing they need, obviously, is they need a guy that's going to be their future quarterback. I think you look at the team last year, they have talented team around them. They had some good pieces right there, especially with their wideouts. They have Curtis Samuel, good receiver. Terry McLaurin's a good receiver. Some solid pieces on defense. I mean, yeah, this was a pretty solid group of guys roster-wise, but here's the thing. You know what they need? It's like you felt that quarterback, because that's the one thing that really hurt them the most. You remember earlier in the season, they were struggling. They had Carson Wentz starting. Once they turned the keys over to Heineke after Wentz was injured, they actually played better. And you could clearly see improvement within the Commanders as a team. But yeah, even then when they were playing better, Heineke was the better option. Guess what they did? They decided to go back to Wentz, and they ended up losing an elimination game. Then they tried with Sam Howell the last week, and it was better than it was with Wentz. And sure, it was maybe the Cowboys sleeping on them played a factor too. Yeah, but at the same time, clearly the Commanders, they need to realize they need a guy that they can actually rely on. And trying to bring in a guy that was good a few years ago ain't the answer. They need to either decide they're going to maybe give Sam Howell another look next year, or they should have just stuck behind Heineke. But maybe if they would have just stuck with him, maybe that elimination game, who did they play again when Wentz came back? Maybe if they would have just stuck with Heineke, they would have played better, maybe. Maybe they just would have been played better and they could have won that game. But it blew up in their face, and that's what it cost them. But yeah, that's the one thing they need, is just to find someone that they can rely on at quarterback. And now this goes on to the next team right here, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Pittsburgh Steelers, I mean, Mike Tomlin's still going to be there. He's not showing any signs of slowing down. And they rallied late in the season, but now one thing they're going to need is they're going to need some help on the O-line, I feel like, going forward. So that's one thing they're going to need going forward, is they need some help on that O-line to protect their future franchise quarterback in Kenny Pickett. So that's something the Pittsburgh Steelers, I think, really got to focus on and try to build this team up for Kenny Pickett, especially on the offensive side of the ball right there. So you got to start right there, get some help on the O-line right there so we can be protected year two. Also need some weapons too, so we can have some reliable options to throw the ball to. So that's the main thing right there, is getting that help right there for Kenny Pickett so he has a chance to really help this team going forward. So that's a key right there. So now let's going to move on to the next team. This is going to be a more interesting team. This is going to be different than what most teams on this list. It's going to be a different need. So for the Detroit Lions, one thing they need is they need help on the defensive side of the ball, especially with the secondary. Because the Lions, they had one of the best offenses in the league. They did. I mean, Jared Goff was looking pretty good, looking like a gunslinger out there. And you had, so they were, offensively, they were improved. But one of the things that hurt them throughout the season is they lost several high-scoring games that if just their offense or their defense had played better, they could have won those games, and that could have got them in the playoffs. And they still won 9 games in spite of it. Now, if just their defense had been just a little bit better, they could have snuck in the playoffs. So that's the thing the Detroit Lions need to focus on is building up that defense to play better next season. You know what they reminded me of? They remind me of the Kansas City Chiefs during that Dick Vermeil era with Trent Green, Priest Holmes, Larry Johnson, where sometimes where they had good piece on offense. Tony Gonzalez too. Right, that team. It reminds me of that in terms of the offense was doing good, but the one thing that hurt them was the defense, and that's what I feel happened here with the Detroit Lions. So they got to upgrade that defense, particularly that secondary, to be better next year. Maybe that could help them get into the playoffs. Maybe even possibly win a division, host a home playoff game. But that's something they got to work on. Now, this next team's an interesting one. The Seattle Seahawks. I mean, they're in an interesting position right now. They got some pieces on offense. They got their weapons there. Geno Smith, I mean, you're going to try to bring him back, I think. But you got to wonder, can Geno Smith repeat the run he had throughout the season this year, next year? Or is it just a one-year wonder thing with Geno Smith? That's the ultimate question right there. But really what they need the most, though, at this point, looking at what they did during the season, is they do need a little bit of help on the defensive side of the ball there. So they could use some help right there. So I think it's important that the Seahawks try to revamp that defense up a little bit going forward to try to have some better luck next season. Of course, if you're assuming Geno Smith has anything close to the season that he had, but that's the main thing going off what they just did that they need to work on right there. So they can have those pieces ready going forward. And they will get some help because they have some extra picks from the Denver Broncos. So they could get some help right there and even get better next year. So that could work out for them. That's what they need. Now, this next team, Miami Dolphins. You finally made it back to the playoffs. I mean, you have a talented team there. You have Tyreek Hill. But one thing you're going to need, though, you're going to need to be healthy at the quarterback position. That's what you need if you're the Dolphins, mainly. And you're going to need you're going to need to be better conditioned to play in the second half of the season and remain strong. But especially they need someone that can stay healthy at quarterback. Now, Tua, oh, yikes. He was in concussion protocol 3 times in 1 year. Do you think he's even going to be able to honestly come back? I think that just creates a whole, but that's a whole other subject for another time. But this stream is mainly this. I wanted to talk about what the teams mainly need. I could get into another time the more specifics of it, but they do need someone that is reliable to stay healthy at quarterback. And I don't know if they have that right now. So the Dolphins, I think they might be screwed in the short term as far as that goes. So that's all I can really say about the Dolphins right there for the time being. Because I just realistically don't, if Tua's not the guy, I don't see what they can do realistically. Because they're not in the best draft position to draft the guy that they could trust going forward. Which is why maybe they should have just got Justin Herbert instead. And not to mention they forfeited their pick because of the whole fiasco. Right, with Tua, it's just the team doctors, so they're screwed for the short term if Tua can't come back. At least show some promise. That's their only hope, but they need someone who can stay healthy. That's all I can say about the Dolphins. So now we're moving on. This next team is going to be interesting because what they The Los Angeles Chargers. What the Los Angeles Chargers really need is to be able to keep it together for a whole game. That's really what they need. Seriously, that's what this Chargers team really needs, is to be able to keep it together for a whole game. Because you saw several instances they've collapsed late and ended up hurting them, especially, in the playoff game against the Jaguars. That's the one thing that hurt them the most. That's something that the Chargers got to work on the most, is being able to keep it together in the second half of games. And that's really all I can say. I mean, you can contribute to coaching. Maybe that's a factor, but they got to be able to fix that. That's the main thing they got to work on. So that's what they really need to figure out this offseason, how to keep it together for a whole game. They can do that, then maybe they can do even better. But that's a big what if. So this next team's entering an awkward position. The Baltimore Ravens. Oh, excuse me. What they need to do is they need to make sure that they have a quarterback they can rely on going forward. Lamar Jackson's an exciting talent when he plays, but is he really that guy that you can trust and rely on long term? Is he? I mean, that's the question. The reason why is because of his injury concerns. And they're in an awkward position, but yeah, they need a quarterback they can rely on to stay healthy. That's what they need. They need to do a better job playing in the second half, too. So those are the two things they need. Because I feel like they're both important. So the Baltimore Ravens need. And I'm going to skip, just kidding. I just did it for the visual. But now moving along. And we get Deuce saying, thinks that Lamar is going to get traded. I think there's a good chance of it. I don't, because based on the fact that they paid Roquan Smith, I don't know if they're really going to keep Lamar long term. Somebody's going to want him, probably. A team like the Falcons, maybe, or maybe a team like the Saints or somebody like that might want him. We'll have to see. But now the Minnesota Vikings. The main thing they really need the most is their defense needs to improve for next year, because there were several games there where they either were close or that they lost, mainly because of a poor defense. And that hurt them in the wild card round against the Giants. So the Minnesota Vikings, they got to shape up on that defense. And there's talent there on that defense. Jordan Hicks, Patrick Peterson's not the same Peterson he was in his prime, but he's still an option. I mean, some other decent pieces there. So they're talented defense on paper, but it's not actually meshing out come game time. So they got to improve their defense is the main thing they got to do. So that's really what I got to leave it at right there. Either they need a new coordinator. Oh, wait, did they fire the defensive coordinator? I don't. Hold on. Okay, yeah, they need. All right, so they're going to look for a new D coordinator. And they probably need to invest in it, getting a few more options in there too. So, but that is what they got to work on. Now, this next team, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Well, obviously, what they need is they need a new QB. That's the main thing they need. They need a new QB. Maybe with the shape that their division's in, do they really need like a great QB at this point? But they need a younger quarterback, though, is what they need. I mean, Tom Brady, hey, he helped win them their second Super Bowl, so he's always going to get credited for that. I'm sure Bucs fans will love him. They'll love him down the Tampa Bay area for that short period of time. But they do need a younger quarterback, that's for sure. I mean, I could say, Todd Bowles, I have my concerns with whether or not he's a reliable coach. But mainly, though, they do need that younger quarterback, so that's the main thing the Bucs can focus on. I mean, they could maybe get one in free agency or try to trade for one. Possibly, but they do need somebody younger that can play better than what Brady played that season, because this is the first time we really saw Tom Brady look past his prime. I mean, don't let the regular season, don't let the standings fool you. They mainly did that because the rest of their division was... So they managed to squeak their way into the playoffs and got a lot of help from their division, but they're going to need to upgrade. It's like Tom Brady had an incredible run, but I think it's time for him to move on. I think it's time for the Bucs to move on. So now moving right along right here. So the Jacksonville Jaguars. I mean, they did turn things around in the second half of the season. I mean, they got Doug Peterson there. He's got these guys believing in themselves. Lawrence is making some progression right there. They got some decent weapons on the offense in the passing game. Maybe they just need... Really, they need to do is maybe add a few more depth pieces, maybe on the defensive side of the ball. Maybe they need, they need to get a little bit better. Maybe they need their running back right there so they can have a 1-2 punch at running back. Because, Travis Etienne's the number one guy. Maybe just need to get another late round running back that will get number 2 back carries. Maybe just get a few pieces to help bolster the team, make them a little bit better for next year. Probably believe they'll be coming into the season next year a lot more confident based on what they did late in the season this year. So that's really what they need. Just a few more pieces to help them get better, in my view. So that's going to be relatively short and simple. So now we're moving on. So we're just going to use the same color for the next 3. New York Giants. What they mainly need is they need some wide receivers. They need some better options right there, especially because they had a solid run right there. Their future looks bright with their head coach, Brian DeBall. But they do need some better targets on offense. And I feel like that's one of the things that hurt them at times throughout the season. So that's the main thing they need. So in the Buffalo Bills, really what they need is Josh Allen to play better in big games. Because during the playoffs, that's one of the things that kind of hurt them, really. You didn't really get the best. You didn't get the best of Josh Allen, and they need better from him. So that's really the main thing they need based off last year. That's the thing that hurt them the most. Because if Allen would have played better in that Dolphins game, they could have won more decisively. And the Bengals game, that was one thing that hurt them. So it's like, yeah, they got most of the pieces, but they need Josh Allen to play better when it matters most. And that's where I'll leave it at. And the Cowboys, I think, yeah, they need an upgraded quarterback. Look at the talent around them. Got good talent there. They had good talent on the O-line, running back. Saw good defense with Dan Quinn. You just feel like if the Cowboys had a better quarterback, they could have done something more with it. But that's the thing they really need the most right there is help at quarterback. Because Dak, he's an up and down QB. He'll be good at a moment, but then he'll fall off the next minute. So you notice I'm kind of starting to breeze through these last couple of ones. Because these last couple of ones, there's not really a whole lot to say about them. And the 49ers, they need to have that QB situation fixed. They need a quarterback they can rely on to go forward that can stay healthy. That's the main thing they're going to need going forward. And the Cincinnati Bengals, this is relatively simple. It's going to be that offensive line right there. Because look, the Bengals, the one thing when they were struggled that hurt them the most in that AFC Championship game, especially that first half, was that offensive line. I mean, I know some of them blaming the referees, but you can also look at that offensive line and some of the mistakes Burrow made. A lot of that contributed to that O-line giving up a bunch of sacks. And early in the season, when it looked like the Bengals were going to be victims of the Super Bowl losers curse, that O-line was struggling. So that's really the main thing they got to fix up on going forward for the long term. So I was breezing through those last couple ones because there wasn't much to say. But now, obviously there's two teams I haven't gotten to yet. And there's a reason why. Because those are the two teams going to play in the Super Bowl. So I'm going to do with those two teams is give a brief keys to victory for both teams before I end it. So let's get into it. So let's start with the AFC champion Kansas City Chiefs going to their third Super Bowl in 4 years. So a brief overview of their keys to victory for this matchup is one thing they got to do is that the air raid offense has got to click. Patrick Mahomes, he's got to be able to click and sling the ball like only Patrick Mahomes can. I mean, he's been the glue to this whole team. He's the reason they've been to 5 straight AFC championship games. He's the reason they're going to their third Super Bowl. So he's got to be able to sling that ball there against that Eagles defense. And if he can do that and maybe exploit some weaknesses in that Eagles defense you haven't really seen much of this season, that could give the Kansas City Chiefs a chance right there. One thing and I feel like another big key to victory for them is to control time of possession. Because if they can control time of possession, they can maybe wear down that Eagles defense a little bit, make them stay on the field longer than they're used to, and that could give them an advantage where the Eagles defense could start to get maybe a little winded if they have to stay on the field longer than they're used to. And plus, by controlling time of possession, you keep if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you look at it from their point of view, you keep the Eagles offense off the field. You keep Hurts and company off the field where they're not able to be as effective. And you put more pressure on them when they do step on the field. So those are two keys for the Kansas City Chiefs right there. I feel like now the main keys to victory for the Philadelphia Eagles. One is let their defense, if you're the Eagles, let that D-line go all out on Kansas City. Get some pressure on Mahomes. Because we know from past experience, if you get pressure on Patrick Mahomes, even a QB of his caliber can struggle. That's what the Buccaneers defense did in Super Bowl 55, and you saw how it affected the Kansas City Chiefs' performance in that game. Patrick Mahomes himself couldn't even get them in the end zone with all that pressure coming at him. If Jonathan Gannon and that Eagles defense can bring that strategy into the fold, it can be a long night for the Chiefs, and it can help the Eagles out. Another key to victory is attack on offense. Because the Kansas City Chiefs are an offensive team. They're not really known for having the best defense in the world. And with all those keys in offense, from the O-line to their quarterback, to the wide receivers, to the running game, they can attack that Kansas City Chiefs defense and put the pressure on them to the likes they haven't had it. I mean, the Chiefs defense, it's not really as difficult for them as other defenses because they don't face as much pressure. And if the Eagles offense could finally put some pressure on that Chiefs defense they're not ready for, that could help them out too, especially if that Eagles defense can get some blitz on Mahomes. That can tie into key 2 to victory right there. So those are my keys to victory for the main two teams right there. But I'll be back to talk about that more in depth and give a more in-depth preview to it sometime next week. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say right now. So to everyone that tuned in, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed right there. You guys can have a great night. If you haven't done so, make sure to subscribe to the channel, the like button, the notification bell so you're notified when I upload new vids. So until next time, it is Nicky Steez signing off.